everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Roots and Wings.
Log 8? Oh my gosh, log 8. Look at us go. Okay.
Anyway,
So
this week we come to you with boundaries. Again. Basically, we want to talk about the types of boundaries because there's several different types of boundaries that come into effect with relationship with self, relationship with mothers or daughters, or just relationships in general. So,
Exactly.
Take it away.
Perfect. All right, so the first one we kind of want to dive into is physical boundaries. So you're too close, please. Personal bubble, right? So,
And everybody's bubble
is different.
different sized.
And it can change from day to day too.
Absolutely.
So you are allowed to have your bubble shift. But anyway, physical boundaries. Basically exactly what it sounds like. Boundaries around your physical closeness in relationships. Other relationships is where, sexual boundaries would fall in, that kind of a thing.
Yes.
All right. So
Next.
moving on. Mental and emotional boundaries. These are the most common ones. I feel like when we think of boundaries, these are the ones that we tend to, at least us. I won't say it for you guys.
Yes, when we think of boundaries and when we're talking about back to maybe the first week when we talked about reflecting on boundaries, where your actual kind of visceral reaction to the boundary, setting it or receiving it kind of creates an emotional response. Then
these are the boundaries that we're kind of talking about.
There's an emotional standpoint to that.
Right. And a very simple, straightforward example of that is if you were in the middle of a conversation that is making you uncomfortable. And, not that the conversation shouldn't be had ever, because sometimes we need to have uncomfortable conversations.
Right.
But you are able to say, I don't feel comfortable having this conversation right now or in this setting. And so I'm setting a boundary around that. Can we table it and come back, right? So
exactly. I'm not emotionally equipped at the moment to talk about this.
Those are mental and emotional boundaries. Next, we are moving on to, which one comes next? Financial boundaries.
Oh, yes.
Or material boundaries. So that revolves around what you are. Your money is your money. Your stuff is your stuff. And you get to decide what to do with it. Who gets to use it? Who doesn't get to use it? How you get to use your money.
How you get to spend your money.
How you get to spend your money. Whether you save it, whether you lend it, whether you donate it.
Well, and this also comes into boundaries with self, financial boundaries with self, because
That's a hard one for me.
Well, we talk about openly, right? ADHD, mental illness, all the things that go with that. And one of them is like just spending. Just,
yes,
you know what I mean? Feeding
you get the dopamine buzz,
exactly.
Right? When you spend money.
And so setting a boundary with yourself, like knowing the reasons behind why you want to purchase something or spend something, those are tougher, I almost feel like, when we're talking financial boundaries, but that maybe is just me.
No, it's not just you. And
okay, great.
One I've been setting with myself recently is no more than 2 coffees a week out of the house.
Oh, see? Financial boundary.
And it's for a financial reason.
Yes.
All right.
Next.
Time boundaries.
These are huge.
Yeah.
They're
all huge.
Well, they're all huge, but this one is huge in the mother-daughter relationship and in family. Honestly. Because
your time is your own.
There's the shifting, right? There is that shifting from I'm an infant and I need all of your time and everything is concentrated around mom, dad, self, this family. And then we each are now getting our own personalities, our own responsibilities, our own interests.
You cut me off.
Okay, but time. It's a tricky one in families because we like to think that if somebody cares for us or wants to show us, you know what I mean? If they really thought about us, they would spend time in a fashion that we want them to, or as much time as we need, even though it might not be good for them.
And I think this is a good time to talk about how boundaries can change over time.
Exactly.
As people shift and grow.
Exactly.
Right? So if we're talking, we're talking family unit here. And one of your time boundaries is that, let's say every Sunday from 3 to 6 is family time, right? That's a legitimate time boundary.
Yes.
But as kids get older, that we have to kind of accept that the family time might look different.
Yes.
Right? And so you can still say, 3 to 6 is family time, but as a teenager, if you have something to do that's a sport or this or whatever.
I mean, it's adaptable, flexibility, and individual. It's the good news here is you get to adapt it for your family and the personalities that are involved in your household. Just realizing that everybody in the house needs boundaries, not just mom or not just dad or not just the child.
Right.
Right? And honestly, time boundary, I can think of one that was huge for my mom and me, to be perfectly honest, is my mom would call me like 7:30 on a Saturday morning. I had kids. I was, Friday nights, late, working, whatever. But because she was up and she wanted to talk, I'm just going to call at 7:30 on a Saturday morning. And it took a few years to be like, no, I get you think
that time doesn't work for me.
I get you think I should be out of bed, but I'm not.
And I'm happy to give you some time for a conversation, to a chat.
Exactly.
But when it works
time
for
boundary.
both of us.
That's a time boundary and an emotional boundary.
Yeah.
So they will definitely fold in on each other, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
All right.
Next one. Next one's also a big one again, they're all big.
Yeah.
But especially when we're looking at the family unit. I can't speak.
Anyway.
Especially when we're looking at the family unit. And that is spiritual or religious boundaries.
Yeah, this is a really hard one in the family unit for sure. And I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Spiritual or religious boundaries. Like, we were raised Christian, we were raised, Protestant.
Yeah, I was raised in a Protestant church.
And that was the belief. To stray from that was like stepping over a line. So your freedom to choose as a child in our household wasn't there. Like there was no boundary surrounding that.
Well, and even like moving forward beyond until recently,
Oh,
right?
Exactly.
Even after being a child, well, for you, it's still not a thing with your mother.
No, it isn't. And
if you were to say, I don't necessarily believe X, Y, and Z.
Yes, that conversation is a non-starter. But it was for you and I for a long time too. That was something I couldn't have a conversation about.
Right.
And that was all me.
Well, and you practiced, emotional boundaries by saying, I can't have this conversation
right now. I did, and you practiced
restraint.
That, but also boundaries by saying, okay, we can't have this conversation right now, but it doesn't go away because it makes you uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Right? And we got to the point of where we were able to talk about it, but that one is still sometimes touchy for us.
Well, and I'm sure for others as well, that one is difficult, but we have to remember that we all need to have our boundaries around our beliefs and our spirituality, and it's all different for everybody.
Yes. And is that the last one?
Well, no, it's not.
Oh, okay. Hurry up.
The last one, sorry everybody, this is a longer video than usual. The last one are non-negotiable boundaries.
Oh, yes.
Right? So, and this is important to talk about because it shows us that boundaries, for the most part, are and should be flexible.
Yes.
And changing depending on who you are at the time, who the other person is, the situation, environment. As you grow, things change. What you're comfortable with changes.
Life is not stagnant. Like it is a river. It ebbs and it flows. And so, yes, these boundaries, for the most part, should be flexible and adaptable and talked about.
But it's okay also to have non-negotiable boundaries.
It definitely is.
An example of that would be in a romantic relationship, basically saying, okay, infidelity is a deal breaker for me.
That's a non-negotiable boundary.
That's a non-negotiable boundary.
Yes.
Right? And
in our relationship, we definitely have had some non-negotiable boundaries. And I can bring it right back to spiritual because there was a non-negotiable boundary for me that I was not emotionally ready to have that conversation. It was never going to be productive. It wasn't going to be compassionate. And so this boundary was until I grow a little bit more in this area, we can't have the conversation.
Right.
and she had to respect that, whether she liked it or she didn't like it. It would have been detrimental to our relationship for her to cross that boundary
Right.
at the time.
And this is where, the word ultimatum kind of comes in sometimes.
Yes.
Non-negotiable boundaries can look like ultimatums, but that is exactly why we need to be mindful of not making all of our boundaries non-negotiable, because if they're all non-negotiable, then...
Yes. I mean, this definitely was longer than we wanted it to be, but I will just say this wraps up into our concept of relationship with self. I shouldn't say you have to, but spending time getting to know yourself and how you can best shine your light in the world and what you need in order to be able to do that is how you're able to set and decipher flexible boundaries from non-negotiable boundaries.
Yeah, practice setting them with yourself first.
Absolutely.
And then from there, you can work on setting them with others.
But those are the different types. And because there was so many of them and we're wordy sometimes, it's longer than normal. But thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for next week.